This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Tim, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Stephen St. George, and Lindsay Trebet. Thank you for making this show possible. And if you would like to help support the show, check out www.wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the Patreon link. It's only $3 a month, and you get extra content all month long.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? First show in year 10. And of course, it's UFO History with Aaron Gulyas.
Hello.
And Mike Clelland.
Good evening.
Two of my favorite people to have on the show.
Right on for us.
Thank you.
And, initially I said, did anything happen this year? And then so I asked on social media, and I got some interesting questions. So I think we have more than enough to cover this episode.
Yeah.
Because it did seem like it was pretty much dominated by deaths and the whole, government stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can go through the deaths real quick. We did this on the year-end in review, but we lost Jeff Ritzmann.
Yeah.
Which I've spoke to Jeff Ritzmann a couple of times, but I didn't really know him.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither. I listened to his stuff. Interesting guy. Had some really good ideas. I enjoyed listening to him and his ideas. It's how old was he when he passed? He
was
around
50.
Years, no, he was a few years younger than me, so he would have been probably in his mid-50s.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I know he saw every Iron Maiden tour.
Oh, wow.
And so that would have been 80, 81 that he was going to concerts. So, yeah, mid-50s sounds right. Yeah, Iron Maiden were his favorite band. So he went to literally every tour they did and got a shirt from every tour.
Wow.
And he painted guitars.
He did, and he was a great artist as well.
Yeah, very skilled, yeah.
And I loved having him on the show. I just regret I never got to meet him.
So here's something that he was working on a book. I know he was working on a book.
Yeah, it's not going to come out.
You've heard that it's not going to come out?
Yeah. Talked to Jeremy Vaney about it because he's still in touch with the family, and they don't want to do anything with it.
Okay, how interesting. Wow, would I loved it, because he had some... So what I will say about Jeff Ritzmann is he had a very nuanced thoughts about the contact experience.
Oh, yeah.
And was very skilled at sort of articulating that elusive, mysterious quality that people struggle over, I guess that the To the Stars Academy ignores that nuanced. I guess they're not even around anymore. But the former To the Stars Academy seem to ignore completely just how subtle and elusive and spooky and eerily orchestrated for the individual.
Yeah,
this stuff can be
personal.
Very personal, yeah.
So. Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all. This is what happens when you see an alien,
right?
Sort of thing. Yeah.
Also, Leo Sprinkle. I know, Mike. You knew him, right?
I knew him quite well. Yeah, and he was one of the first people I contacted when I was coming to terms with my experiences, which would have been around. Good grief, 2006 or 7. I guess I could figure this out. Probably 2007. And it, so I feel like I've talked about. So I had this weird experience where I saw a bunch of owls, and it kind of made me go crazy. And sort of during in that insane chapter of my life, I was living in Idaho, and in Wyoming is right next to Idaho, but he was on the eastern side of the state, and I was on the western side of Wyoming, and so I drove and saw him. I drove and hung out with him, and spent a few hours with him at his he ran. So Leo Sprinkle was taught psychiatry. I think I've got this right. I don't think he taught. He was a teacher of psychiatry. He was a doctor, but he was not he didn't have he wasn't a physician. So
right.
He wasn't a psychiatrist. He was like a psychologist. And he ended up parting ways at the University of Wyoming, which is in Laramie. At some point, there's actually, this is worth reading if folks want to Google this. The Atlantic Monthly in the early 1990s, maybe like 1991, put out an excellent article on UFO contact. It didn't have any giggle factor. It was taken very seriously. I can't remember who the author was, but it focused on Leo Sprinkle. It was a really good article, and for a mainstream publication. And then somewhere, I guess in the 90s, he parted ways with the school for obvious reasons. His work he was focusing on stuff that I could imagine a conservative institution like the University of Wyoming didn't see eye to eye with. He parted ways and started his own like a therapy set. He had an office, and at the office, he had an office, like a big office with multiple people working there. But not only were there family clinicians and family therapists and psychiatrists there, but there were also like Reiki therapists and massage therapists. Mm. And it was kind of a big office. It's still there. And the last time I wanted to talk to him, and I called up, this is last year at one point, I called up the office, because he actually preferred you'd call the office and not at home. I made that mistake. I called him at home one time. He made it. So he was a professor at college, and you could kind of sense he's got this very, very genial side to him. But wow, I could see he would be a tough teacher at a college. But so I called him at home, and he said, "Oh no, you should call my office, and let's do it that way." And so I called his office, and he must have been in about 91 or so when I called the office, and I said, "Is Leo there?" And the lady on the said, "No, Leo doesn't come in here much." And I'm like, "Listen, I just want to ask, how's he doing?" And this lady, the woman, the receptionist said, "Oh, he's doing so great. He's doing so wonderful." And when I saw Leo at conferences, this is sort of, me sort of scoping out the like seeing Leo. When Leo walked past people at a conference, like sort of old guard folks, Linda Howe and stuff like that, people would watch him walk by with this reverence that was palpable. And that was the same thing that happened in his office, because he introduced me to all the people at his office, and then I'd watch him kind of walk around, and I'd watch the people's eyes as they followed him, and he commanded so much respect at just a nice human level.
Nice.
And so the very first time I'll cut this. I feel like I did an interview with him that's on my website.
Excellent.
The Hidden Experience site. It's a really good interview. But the first time I went into his office, I talked for a full hour, and it was a session. We just did a full hour session, and I explained, oh, this happened to me, and this happened in my life, and I had this missing time thing, and I saw this close-up UFO sighting out a window when I was a boy, and this happened, and then, I literally had this story, oh yeah, I saw some gray aliens in my yard. So I had all these stories that day, and I was so tied up in knots. It was really a hard chapter of my life, and I kind of at the end of the session kind of went, I don't really think I was abducted. And he slapped his leg, and he let out this huge belly laugh, like just roared with laughter right to my face. And I've explained this to people before or since many times, like Leo, Leo laughed in my face when he said, and they're like, that's terrible. They all say that, and I'm like, oh no, you have no idea how wonderful that was for me. And I have to think he sized me up and knew to do that. Like this is like this is what he needs. This is what Mike needs right now. He needs me to laugh in his face to get my point across. And it was so wonderful. So, and I've seen him work with other people, and I could just watch him size people up and just give them, reflect back exactly what they needed. And sometimes that was tough. He was tough with some folks too. So yeah, his passing, by all accounts, he led a wonderful, rich life, and his wife is still alive, is my understanding, but she is suffering from dementia in ways so she was like right there at the hospice center, the next room from him. And I talked to a woman who saw him just a few days before he died. So that visited him at the hospice center in Laramie.
Anything you want to?
Yeah, he really was a pioneer in the abduction sort of research field, and I was just looking at this. He was at Wyoming from 64 to 89. So he was there a long time, and he left as a professor emeritus. So I don't think it was, an acrimonious split necessarily, but because his papers are in the collection at the University of Wyoming Library. So if anybody wants to take a field trip to Wyoming, I'm sure there is a lot of stuff, including some stuff that cannot be accessed until the year 2095, I think.
Why?
Probably because because of the age of the people in the records that he's talking about. Probably because a lot of counseling records and things like that, they've got restrictions on, there's boxes you can't access unless you sign the research agreement about confidentiality and things
that
like
makes
that.
sense.
So, yeah, so because there's clinical notes and things like that in there, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, he left all his stuff to the University of Wyoming, and boy, looking at the list of a lot of really, really interesting stuff in here, like box 4, file 13, Friedman, Stanton T, MJ12. It's like, I mean, I'm sure it's probably something you can find on the internet, but it just sounds so mysterious and evocative, right? He's got MJ12. So lots of interesting stuff, and he was around forever. And if you look at any sort of UFO stuff from the 1970s and 1980s, 60s, but especially in the 70s and 80s, he's everywhere. He really does show up in a lot of different places. He's listed as a co-author on a lot of books, probably writing forwards and introductions. He was had his fingers in all sorts of sectors of it, and another one of that generation, that 60s, 70s, 80s, and onward generation that we're at the point of losing UFO history, or the people who lived through that early phase.
Yeah, definitely. And the other person I'm aware of that passed away was Skylaire. I don't know how to say her last name.
Alfvegren.
Okay.
Yeah, Alfvegren something. Yeah, that's how I always.
Alfvegren or Alfvegren. Yeah. I talked to her on the phone a few times. Just called her up. I went through a phase where I was just shameless, and I would just, if I wanted to talk to someone, I would figure out a way to talk to them. So I talked to her a few times, and this is funny. There was a video that I found online of her where she was just giving a tour of like a house full of artsy people in Los Angeles. And I would love to find that again. She was so deadpan and so funny in this kind of, like, I must have been like the late 80s or early 90s, and just this kind of flop house of artsy folks. Huh. And just going around talking to every single person in the house. It really gave me an insight into how, like, super cool she was, so.
Yeah, I never had any interactions with her. She was on my Facebook friends list, but I never talked to her or anything.
No, I never did either. I read some of her writing that was online in various places. And I think she did some of the weird music shows with Greg Bishop from time to time. And yeah, seemed like an interesting person, but very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was a she was a scholar of of Charles Fort. Mm-hmm. So she really knew Charles Fort well, and she did a handful of podcasts over the years where that's what she talked about, basically, like, let's talk about Charles Fort. So she was brought on as the sort of the scholar of Charles Fort,
if I knew that, I would have had her on for that.
Yeah, and I know Greg interviewed her, and there's somewhere on the on his show Radio Mysterio, so you could just Google her name, and so there's an episode that I remember listening to, and that's the reason I reached out to her after that episode. Yeah.
All right.
Probably went back to the 2008 maybe.
So let's let me see what listeners wanted me to ask first. I'm sure Mike will like this one. Why would a UFO be shaped like a Tic Tac?
How interesting. Yeah. So I mean, why are they? So I worked with Bud Hopkins and sort of talked about sightings that I had. And he was very interested when people came up with things that weren't actually saucer shaped, because if you were going to lie about something, you would say it was shaped like a flying saucer.
Sure, yeah.
And then, So yeah, I don't know. I'm not so much suspicious of the Tic Tac sighting. I guess blasé or bored of it. It just seems like of all the, of all the thousands of UFO cases, yes, it's very good. There's radar returns. There's the kind of things that, there's jet pilots that can talk about it and stuff. But
I still feel like it's probably earthly technology.
Yeah, me too.
I have certainly thought about that, and I'm so uninterested in the case that I'm not. It doesn't even, it's not on my radar, I guess, to say so.
All right, so that one came from Jimmy Eaker. Okay, so George Kanakris, I think it's Kanakris. No, it's not. It's Kanakaris. Wait, now who asked what? Oh, maybe this one's from Sirkin. Why was there so much Vallee bashing? On P. Harris, that I get, but Vallee. So what did you guys think of Vallee's book? And what do you think's going on there?
I have no idea. It's like Vallee has good stuff. I've enjoyed reading it. I think Messengers of Deception is
must read.
Must read. I think Passage to Magonia is useful for dipping into, for finding examples of things, but reading the thing straight through is boring as hell.
Yep.
I think it's interesting stuff. I don't know. I don't know why he would hitch his star to such a wagon as Paola Harris, who teaches courses on galactic diplomacy for the Exopolitics Institute and other disreputable stuff. I don't understand that unless she had access to witnesses or sources or information that he absolutely needed to write this book, and the price he had to pay was putting her name on it. I don't know. It's weird.
And I've met Paola, and she's got a funny reputation within the field in a way, but you're exactly right. Where she had done interviews, audio interviews there were two witnesses. They were little boys at the time. One of the people is still alive, and there were two Spanish-speaking little boys, and now they went on to be, I think one of them, there was a cop in L.A. or something like that. So, and so she had done interviews with both of them. So it was basically her story, and then he came in. So I have the book. I have not read it, though I will tell you, I got 100 Facebook things that said, which is true, that the opening story in the book is they go to the Owl Cafe or the Owl Bar in somewhere in New Mexico, and that's how the story opens. Which has, as far as there is absolutely nothing paranormal synchronistic about that at all, as far as I can tell. It's just so. And I've listened to many audio interviews, and so I think he comes across as like the book that came out is a crashed saucer story. Excuse me, it's not a saucer; it's an avocado shape.
Avocado, yeah,
avocado shape, yeah. So which is and then the research that it sounds like that they have found pieces, and those are being analyzed. So there is material that's being analyzed, and then not much has come out there. And then there was also so that's, and I can't remember the name of the book now.
Trinity.
Look it up. It's
Trinity.
Trinity. Thank you. I was just about to look it up on my.
The Best Kept Secret is the subtitle, which is stupid because there's a book about it. That bugs me. That really bugs me.
Oh, yeah. So.
Oh, it's a secret. No, it's not. I wrote a book. Clowns. But it's interesting. And
I think he's a very skilled writer. So I think he probably did a lot of the writing. So
I mean, there's material being analyzed, and meta materials have been in the news the last couple of years. I'm still waiting on some sort of result from Art's Parts, honestly, from back in the day. And I don't know, the whole crashed saucer thing is just it's just, I don't want to say cliched, but it's like, is this the well we're going back to? I mean, and this maybe this is the crash saucer case that breaks it all open.
It's the best kept secret. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Until they wrote the book, screwed the whole thing up. But it's interesting. And I think it's interesting that in a broader sense that Vallee has been very much putting himself back into the UFO spotlight in the last few years after several years of being very, I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm not learning anything from that anymore. So it's I don't know. I haven't read it either.
I've listened to audio interviews. It's terrible. So I can't review a book that I haven't read in any, and I won't pretend to. But in his interviews on the subject with George Knapp in particular, he's a dynamic speaker, and the story, if I got this correct, was never covered, researched, except for some interviews that Paola Harris had done and collected. She might have published a little bit on it, but nothing ever happened. So it was basically a story that had never been pursued. So he and Paola pursued it and spoke to the remaining witnesses and looked up all kinds of statistics and things basically did. I'm going to say it. They did boots on the ground research and actually went to the spot. So.
I think the bashing comes from people were expecting something revelatory from Vallee. It's been so long since he put a book out. Suddenly there's going to be a new Vallee book, and everyone's like, oh my God, what did Vallee find that he's going to write about? And then it turns out to be a crash saucer with, Paula, and it's like, oh, what?
Yeah, it was very, very, very sort of unexpected and kind of anticlimactic, because the people who are waiting for stuff from Vallee are people who are waiting for the next kind of semi multi-dimensional folklore tinged Vallee book, or some sort of like incisive sort of critique of the culture and the dangers of the culture, like you had with Messengers of Deception and in his book Revelations, whichever one where he interviews Bill Cooper and sort of cuts to the heart of the Bill Cooper stuff. And what we got was a book that on the surface at least seems as sort of goofily credulous as the types of UFO books that Vallee fans have been making fun of for the last 30 years. Right.
So he was on he worked with James Fox on The Phenomenon, and it's my understanding he kind of hung out at the editing room and helped the editing process and then he wrote another book. I wish it was on Amazon. I ordered it, pre-ordered the book. I can't remember the name of it. This would have been.
That was the one that got canceled.
It was the one that got canceled.
Which then became the Trinity book.
No, I don't think it was. No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it was. This was a book all about inside, inside the like an updated version of the secret college.
Oh, okay. The impression I got is that he was working basically on the Trinity book, and then she had all the interviews and stuff, and so they redid it as this.
Okay, so maybe I'm speaking wrong to it. But I recall it was much more about inside the secret keepers, what's really going on with the secret government, and because whoever that is, the sort of invisible college. Yeah, I called it the secret college. Excuse me, the invisible college. sort of a re-examination of that.
And I could be wrong, but that was the impression I got when that happened.
So we could probably. I'm not going to Google anything right now, but but he did. They did an incredibly long Joe Rogan interview where he talked a lot about that book and kind of hinted at it, and it sounded a lot more like it was going to be spilling some beans about some secret insider stuff.
Huh. Well, maybe that'll still come out at some point.
Yeah.
So the other thing with this case, though, is that you're talking to people. I mean, this happened, 60 years ago?
Yeah. More than that, maybe. Like 45, right? So
it was right after the Trinity test. So that would have been 45, exactly, yeah.
And I can't imagine Vallee doesn't know how bad memory is. And especially over that length of time, to interview these people and take it at face value, they may fully believe what they're saying, but how much has their memory changed over the intervening years? And I would think probably a lot.
Yeah, and been influenced by
popular culture.
Right, exactly.
So I haven't read the book, so I can't speak to any of that. Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem with anything like that, is that people, think, well, I remember it clearly, but that doesn't mean you remember it right.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's a great book, and I keep talking about it, called The Invisible Gorilla, that talks about the way we perceive things, the way that we remember things. And one of the things in there they say is that very impactful, crystal clear memories are no more accurate than like vague memories, like in the sense of their accuracy.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because those feel like, oh no, I'm remembering this right. And they found out, nope, generally that's not always the case.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And he talks about that a little bit in the audio interviews that I've heard him do, specifically with George Knapp. And I think his podcast series is called Mystery Wire.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see what else is on the list here. And that really, I mean, it kind of came and went. Like the book came out, people complained, and then that was, I didn't hear a whole lot about it after that. It didn't really seem to change the culture at all. They also,
No, I don't. No.
And they also put it out to time with the whole government thing as well.
Yeah, which on the one hand could have been a really savvy marketing move, or on the other hand could have, resulted in it being completely swamped and overlooked because all the eyes were on the government thing, and a book doesn't really. Who reads books anymore? Everything's on YouTube, right?
So you mentioned the metamaterials, but Stanford professor Gary Nolan is analyzing those anomalous materials from UFO crashes, and I think the overall result was that they're not anything that we couldn't make, but they're things that we wouldn't make.
Yeah, that's interesting because I have to think that at some point in the process of developing things that we make, we would end up as byproducts of that process producing some things that we wouldn't have intended to make otherwise. So maybe it's an intermediate form of something that was produced while elements who are producing things are working their way towards something more significant. I think the fact that it's I don't want to say the same old story, but you can make this point about a lot of things. Something being weird and not something, and being something that we wouldn't make doesn't mean it's space aliens.
Right.
And,
yeah.
I know we know that, but the way this is always presented is there is no, if it doesn't have a label saying where it was made, clearly it must be from outer space, right? Especially if it's something weird, if it's something that we wouldn't make. I don't know. There's the results of the tests, which are interesting, and they are what they are. But then it's the way these things are always spun to keep promoting the same agendas over and over again.
So one of my theories on what we're really encountering here is that these things have a temporary existence.
Oh yeah.
And when Josh did his book on smells, one of the things he found is that sulfur is like the most common smell of all these different phenomena, which sulfur is decay.
Right.
So if they're here temporarily and immediately start decaying, and there was a couple cases I found that really kind of suggest that's what's going on. The slag, the stuff that's being, analyzed could be the waste material from that transformation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And it would, develops, it's comprised of elements that we can identify. Right. So yeah, that's, I think that's at least as sensible as space aliens.
Probably more so than space aliens.
a bit. Yeah.
So one of the other, Sirkin also mentioned he wanted you guys to talk about Skinwalkers in the Pentagon, which I have not read.
Worst book cover ever.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yeah. So, but
awful. The it uses the same stock photo as some Steven Seagal poster. Steven Seagal movie poster. Adam Gorightly did a great thing where he had a little contest to come up with better alternative covers for Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, and they were all better than the original cover. I good grief.
And who wrote the book?
I think George Knapp was involved.
Home Kelleher, I think. Here, let me look it up here.
Home Kelleher, yeah. The usual Skinwalker suspects,
right?
And that's a cynical for the Pentagon, cynical way to look at it. But there's, I mean, I know how this is going to sound. There is a handful of people who have been basically making a living recycling the same stories to different people and under different company names for a very long time, right? And it's like, my gosh, George Knapp has the scoop. George Knapp's had, quote, the scoop for 30 years, right?
Right.
And it's this. Oh gosh, I'm looking at this cover, and it's James Lakatsky, and was the other one besides Keller and Knapp. Readers will be amazed and enthralled, said Harry Reid, and he's dead now. So, you see, there's a connection. But I'm not saying they killed Harry Reid to cover up the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. I'm not saying that. But I haven't read it. It's got good reviews on Amazon, but I can't finish that sentence. But it's been the best thing is in the description. I remember this, and I looked it up just to confirm. The last sentence of the description is, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon has been reviewed by the U.S. Department of Defense and, in all caps, cleared for public release.
Uh-huh.
You know what that means? There's absolutely nothing in it that
right.
that they have a problem with anybody knowing. It's about, just stamp unclassified, not a secret in front. It's not like the greatest secret, like the Trinity crash.
Right.
It's absolutely no secret at all. And they say it on the cover. Sad. Somebody should have taught them differently about that. But it just seems, I don't know. I haven't read it. I should read it. I don't want to read it, but maybe
I want to read it. I'll read it. So.
Okay, read it. Take that blow for us, Mike.
Okay, I will point out that I am footnoted in it. So,
really?
Excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, I have a citation in it. So yes, on page 79, there was a woman that was part of some investigation. I didn't read it. I just got it on Kindle, and the first thing I do whenever I get any Kindle book is I Google owl, or I word search the word owl within the Kindle book, and then my name came up. So, but an oversized owl swooped down over a woman's car, and she had never seen an owl that big, and it happened. I can't remember, there was some paranormal aspect to it. I'm not going to look it up right now, but she had been just recently, researching events involving the Pentagon and involving this sort of more mysterious aspect of it. It's my understanding that there's plenty in here that goes well beyond the sort of nuts and bolts lore and dips into the psychic and consciousness lore. So that's as much as I know, and I feel like I'm correct in that. So. Okay. And I do want to read it. It's just funny. I guess you and I, we all know what it means to have, like, where your stack of books is growing faster than your ability to read books.
Oh,
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a major problem with that.
Yes. So many books that I know I'm never going to read. But I have them, and I'll get rid of some of them eventually once I decide that I'm never going to get around to it. But it's a problem.
Honestly, since I had COVID the first time pre-lockdown, I've not been able to concentrate as well as I used to. And it drives me crazy because I'll start reading, and a lot of times I just lose track of what I'm reading, and I'm like, this never happened before. Like, I used to be able to sit and read for hours without a problem.
Yeah.
It's just, and especially if the book is like so-so, and I just want to read it to have someone on, and I'll be like, oh, it's not catching me, and this is really not good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that from some other people who have come through COVID, that COVID brain sort of sticks around.
Yeah. I mean, I can focus on things. It's just not for like I used to be able to,
Right.
So that's making it even harder because I have this huge pile of books I really, really want to read, and every time I sit down, my brain just starts wandering, and I'm like, oh, come on. Okay, so the next one, I figure you guys are going to have a lot of fun with. Yes, from Arthur. Only one real UFO story of 2021, and that was the much-needed hilarity of Anjali, or Alien Cave Lady, as Tim Bernal calls her.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, I don't know anything about this.
Oh, my goodness.
Really?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. She was just on with Strieber, but only for subscribers.
Yeah.
Or I guess the big reveal was only for subscribers, so...
she's the woman that talked in front of the Lincoln Memorial or something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You know what? I watched that video where she was talking, and there was a security guard type guy, like with aviator glasses like standing behind her, like. But it was like, but the guy had, this is going to sound so, it's like, the guy had like a really ill-fitting suit, and he had like chinos on that he looked like he got it, like, you know, TJ Maxx or something like that. He didn't look like he was he was outfitted by the FBI or like a,
he looks like somebody who was hired to pretend to be some sort of security guard.
But he didn't even go get a costume, right? If you're hired to do that, you would want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you would actually want to get the nice fitting suit, you know?
Yeah, so. He had like a black jacket. That was like his one concession to looking like a fake Secret Service guy. It was weird. It was just so strange. And, you know, there's a cave where the aliens are, but, you know, she can't tell you where the cave is, but she's assembling a team. If you want to be on the team, you know, let me know and I'll decide who's going to be on the team. And then ended up the team didn't go to the cave because somebody talked, and the person who owns the land the cave is on decided that she couldn't go. It was a mess, and she found what I think more than one different kind of alien, and they communicated with her telepathically or something like that. And it was I mean, it came across to me as she didn't seem well.
She was something. I didn't watch the entire thing, so that's just difficult for me. But I agree, she did. There was something about her health. She was seated and
yeah. And she just it all came across as very sort of unhinged and getting into slap fights on Twitter with people. You know, not ignoring, you know, the trolls, but sort of engaging with them, and it was actually a nice little flashback to the sort of unhinged goofiness of ufology that we all love, right? Here is a person who has wild claims and is sticking to them, and as those claims, you know, either fall apart or unfold differently than they were promised, they pivot to different explanations of things, and right. It's really a very kind of old school thing, which I thought it was a nice, I don't believe a word of it, but I think it's a nice refreshing change from random Pentagon insider and their cadre of bought and paid for, in quotes, journalists tweeting about the next big thing that's coming down the road with their souped up van to hunt UFOs or whatever. I don't care. Give me some woman who's telling insane stories on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial with a fake security guard. That's what I want. That's why I'm here. It was interesting stuff. And she's still, like I said, she was on a thing with Strieber last week, I think. Yeah. And it's just she's still there. So we'll see what happens. Her tweets, whenever I've dipped in on her tweets, it's sort of, you know, kind of, oh, that sounds really interesting and deep. And then you think about it, it's like, that doesn't mean anything. So yeah, fun stuff.
Well, you know, and the thing that surprised me is that when Strieber advertised it, he was like, oh, well, her cave thing didn't come to be, but there's still a lot here that's important. And I was like, there is?
Yeah.
It was kind of like him taking the alien mummy story there and, you know, continuing to run with it after everyone's like, this is not an alien mummy.
Yeah, no, this is desecration of a human corpse. Just everybody stop. Yeah. No, it was very sort of, yeah, it was, he did seem to not, I don't know. Yeah, I'll stop talking. It's just strange stuff.
Yeah, you got to wonder why he's continuing with it, if he really believes it or if he just thinks this is what subscribers want to hear. He hasn't survived this long in this field without being canny in those matters, right? So, sure. Yeah. Well, you know him decently, Mike. What do you think?
As far as the case?
Yeah, no. As far as like Strieber, you know, looking at this stuff seriously, why do you think he would do that?
So I can't answer that because I didn't listen to the interview that he did with her.
Yeah, all I saw was the promo for it, which seemed to be taking some of her stuff seriously, I guess is the thing.
Yeah, I can't speak to it because I simply don't know. So if I you know, it's there's something about it that smells fishy, but I mean, I haven't examined it. So I'm just saying that
Fair enough.
without any information at all. So.
Good answer. Fair answer. Did To the Stars fall apart this year or last year?
I thought it was 2020, but the last couple of years really run together.
It was they one big blur from So, but that fell apart within the last year plus, I would say.
And that really, and then but we're still getting the same nonsense. We're still getting the videos and stuff like that. There was the one that was supposed to be like a mothership coming out of the water that pretty much looked exactly what Fata Morgana looks like. That illusion.
I didn't see that. Yeah.
And it's like when I saw it, I thought it was a Fata Morgana. I'm like, oh, look, there's a ship. That's a cool effect. And people are like, no, this is newly released from the government. Mothership coming out of the water. And I'm like, what?
And I have seen, what is it? How do you pronounce it?
What, the Fata Morgana?
Fata Morgana, thank you. I've seen that in the desert where like you'll see mountains floating.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my gosh, it looks like it's not connected. And I've seen it in actually in the winter in Wyoming when you get this certain clear, so that basically mimicking the desert, big, long, endless vistas and high pressure and just the way the air pressure is and stuff like that, where the mountains, like let's say across the valley, look like they're basically someone has snipped off the top of the mountain with a scissor, and then the little section that got snipped off is floating above it like a little saucer-shaped nugget of mountain. So it is a very eerie, trippy thing. And I've seen a lot of pictures like taken from a submarine. This is like proves that there's like a mothership type things emerging from like, what can it be? And I was like, oh, this is that weird effect that happens. Like it's basically the shimmering mirage that you get. And there's also all kinds of people have lots and lots of footage of floating icebergs, that look like they're hovering in like a quarter mile off the ocean. Yeah. So
and does that come out of Elizondo?
I have no idea.
I think so. I think so.
I mean, he seems to now be the focus of what everything's To the Stars was.
Yeah.
He's the go-to voice piece for the secret office that used to be in the Pentagon.
Right. And there's just so much sketchiness there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there really is. It's, a lot.
And right down to videos like that are, he was not only this one with the Fata Morgana, but also the ones he was showing at that one conference that were obvious fakes, and he was putting them up there as real. And it's kind of like, is this part of a psyop? Like, is this intentional, or is this just he doesn't care?
Yeah, is it a disinfo op or is it a grift? That's sort of the question, because honestly, I think it's one of the two. Yeah. Or
maybe a little of both.
Both. Yeah. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, right? So, it's just I don't know, the amount of focus on that sector of the whole phenomenon over the last couple of years is, I guess my sort of noticing of that wouldn't be too much different than back in the 80s and 90s when the focus moved so heavily onto the abduction phenomenon, right? So there always tends to be, a focal point for UFO culture, and it's sort of swung back to I don't know what this is with the government office, the new office opening and everything. Is it Project Bluebook nostalgia? Is it forgetting that there have been several official government efforts to investigate UFO sightings over the years? And like, what, this is new? It's not new. It's a new iteration of an old idea, and just because it happened before you were born doesn't mean it didn't happen. So it's the historian in me talking, but it just the excessively nuts and bolts focus over the last few years is boring to me in a lot of ways.
And I'll say it's actually insulting to me in a way. Insulting, maybe that's not the right way to put it. I feel like there's people who've had the direct contact experience who are kind of, I don't want to say getting swept under the rug, but who are they're not, like the spotlight there's like a magnetic pull to the spotlight right now to things like the very primitive coverage that something like 60 Minutes gave to the UFO thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you all see that 60 Minutes?
No, I didn't watch it.
I saw bits and pieces.
Oh, I watched the whole thing, and it was, I mean, it was, they couldn't have made it less interesting if they tried.
That's the impression I got from the bits and pieces I saw. It's like, I don't need to watch this whole thing. I think there's so much powerful, interesting stuff going on. And I think that there's this, people are trying to focus on this credible thing. Like, oh my God, there's scientists involved, right? So there's like, important, so then that takes complete precedence over first person testimony, which can put people in jail and, into the electric chair and things like that. And so there's the spotlight has been, and I would say the spotlight has moved, I'll say it just as it feels like, through like coercion by the government secret keepers, whoever they might be. Like they are purposely saying, like it's like when the magician, puts their hand over here, they're showing the audience their hand and they're doing something, in their pocket as they're deceiving you with the motion of their hand. So something is going on where we're all saying, look at the Tic Tac over here, and something is in being ignored because of that. So that's what I'm more interested in, is what are we being led away from?
Yes. And that was actually one of the questions we had, is what's really going on that all this stuff is distracting us from.
Right.
So I will say when the To the Stars Academy came out, do you remember there was like the press conference they gave where it looked like they were standing on stage talking to like the stockholders or something?
Right. There was no one
and
there.
It was just in an empty theater. And so so that was when Lou Elizondo got like introduced to the world.
Yeah,
and I remember they just said they called him L. He just said they called him L. Isn't that in that? So, and that was all so spooky. And I walked down the halls and there was like droning white noise. So like the Russians couldn't listen in, it was like all this super spooky stuff. And then there was this one guy that everyone would just call L. And then one day I met him and I was like, well, they could have just been like messing with you and, kind of making it sound more spooky than it really was. But, and on that stage was Jim Semivan, who states outright that he was part of the CIA, and Harold Pudoff was on stage there too. So there was like these characters that have been, let's just say they have higher clearance than I have. So if it was a sort of government disinformation thing, that's the clue to me, is just, who was part of that whole deal.
Yeah. So, that's the thing that gets me about this whole thing. Like suddenly the government elements of the government that you've accused of covering this up for 70 years, suddenly they're the good guys.
Yeah.
Right. They're the ones who are going to finally tell you the truth, because this guy who worked for the Pentagon, right, is, he's courageously stepping forward and he's a tool of disclosure and all this stuff. It's just I don't know. It's just so it's silly, but not in an Anjali silly way.
Yeah,
it's silly in a boring kind of way. And I agree, Mike. I think this trend is really sort of pulling the attention away from and marginalizing the experiencer experience, if that's a way I can put it, because I think that's far more fascinating. And I think probably if there are answers to be found or clues toward what an answer might be, it's going to be in people's recollections and relating their lived experience of these things, rather than somebody who, I don't know, looked at memos in the Pentagon for a few years.
And you guys answered a couple of the questions we had on here. So Mark Brady was the one that said, what was the biggest story in your opinion that was missed while the media was paying attention to the new UFO office?
Oh, I don't know. I missed it. The media was paying attention to the new UFO office.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the big story would what the big story besides that would be. I think,
and of course we're all looking at that stuff anyway. So
right,
Mike, anything?
Nothing at all. No, I'm coming up with a complete blank. Though I would say that the obfuscation maybe obfuscation is the wrong word, but yeah, just the fact that the experiencers are kind of being at the kids' table, let's say.
Yeah.
They're all at the kids' table, and the grown-ups are all having the important conversations about, metamaterials and documents, so.
Well, Perry Peters had asked, is the gap between UFO researchers and contact experiencers really widening as much as it appears?
Well, that's exactly what I was just saying.
Yeah, that's what.
It's, to be fair, there's there's actually there's nobody doing the research that John Mack was doing. It just doesn't seem to be happening right now. In the same way, a lot of people are putting out first-person books, a lot.
Yeah.
And some of those are tough to get through. Some of them are poorly written. They're written passionately, but they're tough to get through. So that's, that there's, it feels like there's a separation there. And it feels like, basically I'm at the kids' table and I'm kind of annoyed at the adults over there because they're talking about the least interesting aspects of the entire collective issue.
And so much of the other table is just them listening to whatever this government agency wants to feed them.
Right.
But I think
yes, exactly.
I think it's also human nature to say, I don't believe those people because I believe this is true and they're saying the opposite. Oh, now they're saying that's true and I agree with it. Well, now I believe them.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it sure, I try not to talk about my family much, but my brother came and saw me speak at a UFO conference in Michigan, in Lake Michigan, in September of last year. So that was a big story that my brother showed up and got to see me speak. And he was very complimentary. And then he asked some very, very good questions after that we had never talked about.
Nice.
And I will say that sure helped a lot that UFOs were on the cover of the New York Times a few years earlier. So
yeah, it did bring attention. I'm not sure. I don't know. I can see how, especially dealing with people who have always sort of wondered why one might be interested in these things and think it's kind of weird to see it get that kind of mainstream attention. It can, I don't know, maybe ease those conversations a little bit. But I don't know. I've never sort of thought that that mainstream media attention is what's keeping this whole thing, from being solved or being popular or something like that. It's and that's not me trying to be some sort of saucer hipster or something. It's just I don't know. I feel the same way about actually almost anything I'm interested in. It's the more people know about this, the better. It's do we need these people here? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I am a saucer hipster, I guess. But but I can see how there can be good come out of it. But it's good on a sort of conversational, interpersonal level.
Yeah.
I've got coworkers, texting me stories. These UFO stories hit and they send it to us. What do you think about this? And it's I think it's really interesting. It's so sort of don't get me started on this because you won't talk to me anymore. But yeah, I am seeing a lot more general non-saucer populations being interested in this stuff. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I don't think that's the key. I don't think there's some magical critical mass of people having an interest that's going to tear down the whatever metaphor somebody like Stan Friedman would use to it's not going to bust open the cosmic Watergate or something like that. Yeah. But if it makes me feel like less of a weirdo for having a flying saucer podcast, that's great.
So I mean the official thing in June or July, whenever it happened, was the Defense Department announced the formation of the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, which will operate within the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. So that's not the same as we're looking for UFOs, first of all.
Absolutely not, is it?
And that was the thing that was forced to come out under some. It had to come out on a certain day. They had to release the paper. Yeah, I think that.
But also, I mean, do either of you think that the government has not been paying attention to the real UFO phenomena?
I really, honestly, I would really, really be upset if I found out that the defense establishment was not paying attention to weird things in our skies.
Yeah.
What do we pay them for, right? Yeah, of course they've been looking at this stuff. Just because they have a new office to handle some of the details, I mean, doesn't...
Or publicly, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I don't know, it sounds sort of paranoid, but if they put it in a press release, it's a lie, right? But yeah, it's, I don't know. I think it's I don't think it's as stunningly crucial as some people seem to think it is.
And if you follow the logic of the Jacques Vallee book, as well as about a crashed saucer 70 years ago, or 70 years ago, and if you follow the sort of Bob Lazar story of the back engineered flying saucers, like there's two. Those same people are like that follow those stories are kind of impatient and kind of like trying to, look at the Tic Tac video, which is if they have the crashed saucers, then they know a lot, right?
Right.
And if they have the bodies, which is part of the lore, I don't know. I have no knowledge whether they do or not. I certainly heard stories. That doesn't make the stories true. But if they have crashed saucers and bodies, then the office is just a facade, because they obviously know more than they're letting on.
Right. And that's the thing. If you believe every saucer cover-up conspiracy that's been circulating for the last 40 years, why wouldn't you automatically believe that this is just a scam?
Yeah.
You can't have both. You can't be like, Roswell, man. Roswell. Be like, oh my gosh, they're looking for flying saucers. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And it's in some of the people are fairly, like someone like Gordon Cooper, who spoke openly about, insider knowledge of UFO research within the government, and that, he's not a wild-eyed zealot. So
right.
And I've heard, usually secondhand, a number of people tell me, well, I know this person in the military, and they said they definitely have crashed saucers. And when I had Walter Bosley on last time, he talked about, like, I think he said it was in the 90s, he was told, kind of like unofficially, but to keep it to himself, about us drilling a hole in Antarctica and finding all this ancient technology.
Uh-huh.
And he said he never said anything about it because he was told not to. But then, a few years later, he started seeing this pop up in the conspiracy forums and things like that. And then he started thinking, so is this what they tell people to see if they can trust them?
Oh, yeah.
And so that makes me think of these crashed saucer stories that seemingly honest military people will come out and be like, no, I was told that we have bodies and a crashed saucer and we're backwards engineering this stuff. It's not so much that they're lying, they're just being tested. And then it also serves the disinfo sort of purpose as well.
Yeah. And then you have people like Philip Corso who write entire books about it that are tough to swallow.
Right. So, I mean, there's so many hands in the game, it's really hard to tell. And I feel like, even Project Bluebook, which was meant to dismiss the phenomena, technically said there are things we can't explain in the sky, but we don't think they're a threat.
Right. Which is what the Air Force would be looking for, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And even on the simplest level, you would not want the fleet of UFOs flying somewhere along the, Iron Curtain back in the 60s and 70s. You wouldn't want those mistaken as incoming Russian nukes, right? So
yeah.
It's my understanding, and this is like part of the folklore again, I have no idea what's true or not, that there was a special red phone that was basically, that would say, like, it's not us. Like, don't let's not go to war over some flying saucers, flying somewhere in Germany, so.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that. I mean, we know the phenomena exists. We know there's something to it, but it may not be an imminent threat to us other than things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I also wonder if the reason they're trying to pull attention away possibly from the individual is because the phenomena itself, especially if it's not dealt with in a negative way, seems to be sort of an enlightenment type of thing. And the powers that be certainly don't want that.
I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I think that is, but I see what you're saying. I know there was stuff, and Aaron can probably speak to this better as far as like the worry that the initial UFO reports by the contactees all sounded like, people were living in the commune, in the the glory of Mother Russia or something like that.
There was some concern, mostly from people calling the FBI, writing to the FBI saying, this guy sounds like a communist. And the FBI saying, yeah, not a communist, but he really needs to stop, telling people he's worked for the FBI. People like Frank Stranges and Adamski suggesting he, has friends in government. And that usually got him in trouble. But members of the public who'd been conditioned to be on the lookout for the commies, they hear these contactees and say, oh gosh, I better call somebody because this is not good. I like that idea about the experience or whatever's out there enlightening people in some way, and the government or elements of the government wanting to prevent that from occurring, which leads me to believe that they have some understanding of what this enlightenment entails and what it could be. They know whatever secret knowledge there might be on the other side of that veil, right?
I very much think that the typical abduction scenario is really just a misguided shamanic awakening.
Oh yeah.
Misguided by our culture, because now it's taken up with the whole alien thing rather than being treated as a spiritual issue.
Right.
There's a lot to that. Yeah, I agree.
So, and I mean, you don't want the government trying to, I mean, let's face it, governments, religions, all these things want control of people one way or another. So they don't want things that are going to make stronger individuals.
Right.
There was a quote from Kenneth Arnold where he said, that he had government agents coming to his home to read the letters that he was getting from people, because he was like the early version of Strieber in a way, where after his sighting in 1947, people reached out to him and sent him letters. So he was like the receiving end of all these letters. Government agents would come to his house and say, "Can we read your letters?" And he was a good American and said, "Sure, absolutely, you can read the letters I've been receiving." So, and then what he said is, in the 80s, he did an interview and he said, what the government is most afraid of is having a Joan of Arc. Yeah. Somebody that can lead the revolution, basically.
Yeah.
And I have been to UFO conferences, and I've talked to a lot of people who have had these contact experiences. Some of them are wild-eyed zealots, and they have every right to be if their experiences are true. But I have not. It's of all the things that are a threat to the United States, it's not the UFO experiencers. Let me tell you, it's not a forceful crowd. Let me put it that way. So.
Fair, yeah. So in April, you had the pyramid videos that Corbell and Knapp released, and if I remember right, these were debunked as planes in night vision.
Yes.
Yeah.
I never saw them.
That's what I remember too. Yeah.
Which, how could they not know that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or did they know that and they didn't care?
Oh, George Knapp, I think, is grounded enough to want to put out real news.
Yeah, I would hope so. I don't know what to think of Corbell.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of him either.
Yeah, I can switch to decaf is usually every time I see him in it, that's the word that rolls around in my head. So.
But I mean, you figure they did the Lazar documentary, they did the Skinwalker one. The Skinwalker one to me was a big disappointment. The Lazar one was, I mean, what are you going to get out of that anyway? Because it doesn't seem like it's probably a true story anyhow.
And my favorite part was when Mickey Rourke went.
So yeah, then putting out this video, I don't know. To me, it just feels it was debunked so easily. Like so much of the stuff Louis Elizondo puts out there. I'm not sure what the goal is.
Muddy the waters.
Yeah.
Discredit the whole thing. I don't know, because it seems like it seems counterproductive if they're if they're running some sort of, if it's a money making thing, then putting out such easily disproven stuff seems counterproductive. So, and they don't seem like the sort of people who would, do it out of ignorance or carelessness. So yeah, I don't know. It's very strange.
So Frank Earl asks, there's one thing I'd really like to know, though I don't think it fits in 2021 history. Why has everyone stopped talking about USOs? It's like the whole topic died with Ivan Sanderson.
Because he made it up. I'm kidding. I don't know. It's one of those things that even when people talk about it, a lot of times they're talking about the same stuff Sanderson talked about.
Yeah.
Now there are other people who, and then on the other extreme of that, there's there's a massive alien base at the bottom of Lake Michigan,
right.
Which is like, no, that's not true. It's in Lake Superior. But it's one of those things that I don't know if it just didn't grab the public attention enough that, to sort of still be a thing. But yeah, I have noticed that the USOs have sort of waned. Yeah.
I think
it's sad.
The last reference I saw to anything like that was the Fade to Black show. And he was talking about some tunnel that you could see using Google Maps or something that UFOs supposedly were coming out of in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last time I heard anyone mention anything about USOs. But I find it fascinating because so many UFOs, including one I saw, went into water.
Very commonly reported, yeah.
So yeah. I don't know why that hasn't been taken up more.
I don't know.
Tom Lisco says, I'd like to know if at this point Mike Clelland thinks the Fae folklore and UFOs have the same underlying cause, whatever that might be.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm all for that. I mean, I Jacques Vallee's, I read Passport to Magonia, and then it was one of the trilogy revelations. Basically, was the Vallee trilogies that reworked Passport to Magonia. I take that very seriously.
I think it was Dimensions.
Okay.
Because that was the first one I read from him, and that covers that stuff, but it also adds in the Marian apparitions and things like that.
And exactly. So the fairy stuff plays into it so I'm all for that. Yeah, I take that very seriously as a we have a modern, the phenomena itself is in a modern costume. It's got modern props.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that either thing is what it seems to be.
Yeah. You know what? I read Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries by
Evans-Wentz.
Evans-Wentz, yes. And actually I didn't read it. I listened to it on audio, and it was so wonderful. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. It was really, and I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. Yeah. It was just a beautiful set of accounts. And it is just one story after another story after another story. Yeah. And they aren't exactly the UFO contact lore, but they have the same flavor and mood in a way that's impossible to ignore.
Actually, there was another question about the UFOs and oceans from Matt in Delaware. He said, in May, the Navy footage of the UFO going in and out of the water was released. Was that the Fata Morgana one?
It might have been. Yeah.
It says, the topic is often mentioned but rarely discussed in detail. What are your thoughts on the implications of UFOs in the oceans? Do you think it provides any new insights about the phenomena, or might this be misleading or even disinformation in some way? Also for Mike, do owls swim?
Owls swim poorly because they are birds.
They're birds.
Not penguins. Yeah, penguins swim beautifully, but and so do ducks.
They're not ducks or geese or swans. Now
there is some footage of people rescuing owls, which people send me all the time, and oftentimes they're like people on canoes will rescue an owl that somehow got stuck in the lake. So they can't fly. They can't lift off. Their wings have to totally dry out before they can fly again. So they need to be rescued. So if you see a little owl in the pond, you get your canoe out there and you go rescue that sweet little thing and set it on the beach so it can dry out. So.
Okay.
I will remember that.
Any other thoughts on the significance of underwater UFOs?
I'll just say Preston Dennett wrote a book about underwater or reports, and he's an interesting researcher. I really like the guy, and he's just has a wealth of stories. He's clear that some of these may not be legit, but he's putting it all out there. Mm-hmm. And that would have been off the coast of California in where his home is. And so those are, but just by the sheer number of reports of things going in and out of the water, simply because a flying saucer goes into the water doesn't mean that there's an underwater base.
Right.
It means that people are seeing a flying saucer go into the water. It could be, and I'm kind of a weirdo, and I'm out at this fringy corner of the research community where I would say, "Ooh, that's, what's the symbolic? What's the ancient lore of going in the water? What's the Jungian archetype of going, if you have a dream and you go underwater, like I would interpret that dream in a certain way." So right. So that's where I'm at. I'm maybe there's an underwater base. I can't prove it, and I guess you could just get a really expensive submarine and figure out a way to prove it. But I don't have a really expensive submarine. But
wait, do you have an inexpensive submarine?
Yeah, I was going to say
no, I don't have an inexpensive submarine either. But what Ghislaine Maxwell supposedly had a submarine, which is kind of a weird little thing to ponder here in synchronistic ways. But so for me, something goes underwater in deep water. That's like I suddenly in my dream I just was pulled underwater and I was forced to that's like going into the unconscious. That's going into your own inner self. So that's how I see the underwater UFOs. I can't go much beyond that, but I find it fascinating for that reason alone.
Mike? Aaron, sorry.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, right? The whole underwater thing, because we've got these stories, but not many stories, but enough that there's enough stories that people know about it, but there's not so much that when you hear one of them, you're like, oh yeah, I know that one. That's that one that you read in an Ivan Sanderson book, right? That you read in Invisible Residence or whatever. So I think it's one of those things where people see these phenomena everywhere. Some of those sightings are going to be over the water. Some of them are going to involve water. If a craft can travel in space, why couldn't it travel under the water? Maybe if this is some sort of like alien creature, not necessarily from outer space, but just an other creature, they might not understand they might not see the same distinction between air and water that we do, right?
True.
They might just see it as like, oh, the air is a little thicker down here,
right?
Slightly wet. But I think it's one of those things where we draw these distinctions between, well, that one's in the sky and that one's in the water and that one landed. We draw distinctions that beings who have completely different everything might not.
True. The thing though is that like if a craft is equipped to go into space, it's actually not equipped to go underwater generally, because you have no pressure in space versus massive pressure underwater.
And for beings for whom pressure is an issue, that
right.
might,
yes, yeah. I'm talking about like our stuff. Like you'll see sci-fi. Like what was that horrible movie where the guy in the spacesuit just goes underwater and I can't remember what it was.
Me either.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He was like hitching he was trying to sneak on the ship going to Jupiter or something like that. And, he just went underwater because he had a spacesuit on and that will protect him from the water. And it's like, but that's not how that works. So I have two more. Let's see if we can get these last two in. From Zach, he wants to know, and I don't know if I don't know anything about this. I don't know if either of you do. In all seriousness, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Demi Lovato getting into the UFO scene. I see a lot of people immediately write it off as attention-seeking, but she's had a near-death experience and all sorts of other trauma, abuse, addiction situations that we sometimes link to the abduction phenomena and contact with the other. So I'm curious if you guys think they might be legit and the effects, if any, of someone that with that much of a platform getting into the ET stuff from seemingly a less nuts and bolts position will have on the phenomenon and how it's viewed by the public.
I think, okay, here's my thing. I think it's interesting that we assume there is some sort of dichotomy between people who have had a genuine contact experience and people who are attention seeking. I think that's a Venn diagram that has some overlap, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think the fact that she is a famous person who has a platform and is seeking to promote these ideas through whatever platform she's able to have, I don't think that necessarily negates the idea that she had a genuine experience. I think part of the Demi Lovato backlash, and I'm not even entirely sure who Demi Lovato is.
Neither am I.
She's one of these celebrities that people younger than I are aware of. And
yes,
that's great. I mean, people my parents' age don't know who my celebrities were, right?
Well, okay, so just to clear it up, she is an American singer, songwriter, and actor, and originally appeared on Barney and Friends.
Oh, Barney. Yeah. I remember Barney, not from when I was a kid. It's like sometimes that was all I could get on my TV.
And then she's done some other movies and stuff after that. So that's who she is.
Okay. Yeah. I knew she was some sort of, some sort of singer, entertainer sort of person. I don't get the hate because any UFO person who is on the national stage or international stage is going to be vaguely ridiculous in some way. I think I think what's behind a lot of the hate and the disdain and the mockery is, I don't know, maybe irritation that somebody famous is horning in on the UFO scene when no, this is ours. This isn't yours. You're one of those people. You're one of those popular, good-looking people. What are you doing over here in our nerd club where we talk about flying saucers? Because we're smart and you're just a singer. Just some of the tweets and social media stuff I've seen very, very much. Oh, he's dumb kid. She doesn't know anything. It's like, well, nobody does. I mean, but if she's had these experiences, why shouldn't? Yeah.
She's almost 30 too. She's not a dumb kid.
Right. But I think people are like, oh, she's on Barney. It's like, because you're 55, you think everybody who's on Barney is still 6. So, we forget that these child stars have, aged.
Right.
The clock ticks. Yes.
Because I don't know. I feel the same way I was when I was 17. So I assume everybody else is still the same age. So yeah, it's I don't know. Good for her. Good for her talking about it. It takes guts to talk about weird stuff like this when you've got that kind of profile.
Yeah, because it could certainly hurt your career.
Absolutely.
Any comments, Mike?
I've seen little clips of the show, and it's a type of television documentary filmmaking that I don't really like. So her intentions are probably great. It's the presentation is in a way that I just can't engage in. So
wait, there's a show?
She has a TV show. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Like I said, I don't even know the name.
Oh yeah, she has a TV. I don't know what it is. But it's a TV show. It's a series, and she goes around and talks to experiencers and people, witnesses and such like that. Yeah. So, but it's a type of documentary filmmaking, television documentary filmmaking that just bores me to tears.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, or no, actually not bores me to tears. It sort of irritates me because it's I guess the kind of filmmaking that, people get younger than, because I'm over 55 now, and it's the kind of filmmaking that people under, that were on Barney now are making, I guess. So it's just got it's got all the trappings of the crappy stuff that's on TV. So.
All right. So the last one coming from Super Inframan was, what are your predictions and what to expect coming out of the Galileo Project in the year ahead?
That's the replacement to the telescope in space, right? It's a new telescope in space. Is that the Galileo Project?
No, isn't that the group that they assembled?
Yeah, it's some team of some new type of sciencey people, and I think Jacques Vallee is part. I think they announced that he's going to be working with them too. I don't know enough about exactly what they're going to be doing, other than they have this group that's going to be looking at the phenomenon. I don't know. I don't really have any expectations. It
is the Galileo Project is the systematic scientific search for evidence of extraterrestrial technological artifacts, daring to look through new telescopes.
Do they mean telescopes metaphorically?
I don't know.
Because it kind of sounds like it, but I'm not sure.
Oh, it says both literally and figuratively.
Oh, okay.
Well, then it is the new telescope that they just sent into outer space.
No, I don't think so. This is a project, and it has UFO people on board. This ground-based project searches for physical objects rather than electromagnetic signals associated with extraterrestrial technological equipment.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe something interesting will come out of it. Yeah, it's like one of these things where, like, I could give you 20 people, 50 people on my email list, like on my email inbox that have like these incredibly mind-blowing stories, these personal experiences that are just electric in their power, in their transformative glory. I don't even know how to say it, just as trippy and weird as anything I've ever heard. And then people can look at a little piece of metal, like, I don't know. I think that the real answer for me is going to come from these people who, not just a few of them, a lot of them who have had these powerful transformative experiences that they are struggling to make sense of on a deeply personal level. Yeah, and I agree. At the same time, let's just put a little fleck of metal under the electron microscope. That work has to happen, right? I'm sure there's really interesting stuff coming out of it, but
so and I'm looking at the list of people involved and the research team, and it's great. It's a couple dozen scientists and engineers from various fields, and that's dynamite. I don't know that it's necessary. That I think the experiences are that people have are not necessarily something that a planetary scientist or a specialist in mathematical physics or an astrobiologist are going to be entirely helpful in documenting. But if they can find some new spacey stuff, that'd be dynamite.
It sounds like they're looking for things like a Muamua.
Oh yeah. Which yes, please do. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited. I think that's exciting.
What is this? What I just filled me in.
The thing that came into our solar system and then left that some people speculated was extraterrestrial.
Oh, like Avi Loeb.
Yes.
Guy from Harvard, I think he's human.
No, although Avi Loeb has an office somewhere in Harvard, right?
I think so. One of the research affiliates with the Galileo Project is Louis Elizondo.
Yeah, that and that's where I was like, oh, really?
Seth Shostak is there. He was head of SETI.
SETI, yeah. Is Jill Tarter involved?
I don't know. There's a lot of names here.
Yeah, there are. I was surprised when I looked at it. It's just, boy, this is a lot of people. But no, I think stuff like the Umumua thing that came through. I think I'm glad there's sort of projects looking at that sort of thing, because honestly, I think that was a lot more fascinating than a lot of UFO stuff, because it was just massive and different and weird and a little troubling. But no, I'll be interested to see what they come up with. I'll be interested to see how long it lasts. Sort of getting into trickstery kind of things, big sort of projects like this that look at potentially weird stuff, strange things happen, things fall apart. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I have I'm going into it with no expectations. That way I cannot be disappointed.
Nick Pope is also a part of it.
Sweet Jesus. Okay, it's done. Now I really have no expectations. The man who made a living off a minor bureaucratic job he had in another country decades ago. He's been trading on that forever.
To be fair, he's only one of the scientific advisory or research. He's one of the research affiliates. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. People that we put on the thing because it gives us UFO cachet, but God, don't let him touch anything. Yeah. Chris Mellon. Yes. I recognize some names here. Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting just because you've got this mix of the hardcore science stuff and Nick Pope and Lou Elizondo. So if nothing else, for when it all closes down, the dueling explanations of what they were actually doing should be interesting. I imagine some of these people will say, well, the Galileo Project uncovered massively incredible stuff, but we can't talk about it right now, and you'll have astrophysicists saying, no, we published a paper, So, yeah, I think just the mix of people involved make it worth paying attention to.
And Jacques Vallee is part of the main research team.
Right. Yes.
So,
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll do a Patreon episode and cover a couple other minor things. But let's, why don't you guys tell people where they can find you? Aaron, you first.
Yeah. You can find me at saucerlife.com for the Saucer Life podcast and greatlakeslore.com for our new, more history focused, but still weird and creepy and paranormal podcast at greatlakesLore.com. I'm on Twitter at Saucer Life. So those are the places.
And Mike?
You can find me by Googling owls and UFOs, and my name is the first thing that comes up. Or you can go to MikeClelland.com, and that sends you to any number of little funny websites that I've generated over the years, including the Hidden Experience one, which is the core of my research is connected there, as well as Amazon, where the books and stuff are all available.
All right. Thank you both. I want to take a moment here to give a shout out to all of my Patreons. It's because of you that this show is possible. And a special shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more. Tim, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Stephen St. George, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Christine, the 100th Monkey Project, a blue second-generation MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, land of the crazy and communicable, Chris Ernst, Chris Johnson, Craig Cicernos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, David Moore, Denise Sarek, Diane B., Diona Bidwell, Duffy Dowder, Edu Camahort, MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, James Lattimore, Johanna Rojas, John W. Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, Mark Bowley, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker at Stark, Roger Gonzalez, Sam Sharon, Stone Wilderness Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, 36 Dingo, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Trewill, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Martina Saint, and Stephen D. Thank you all so very, very much. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.